All right. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all well rested and ready for a new day of learning. So our first speaker today is Nils Gerhardt. He'll be talking about applied PQC, deploying stateful hash-based signature algorithms in distributed environment. Welcome.
Thanks a lot for the warm welcome. Hope you had a good rest and good to see that you're here at 9 o'clock in the morning and the last day. So hopefully I can make it worth your time and while we talk a little bit about a topic we're driving for a while, a state-based hash-based algorithm in distributed environments. But before I start, let me quickly, for those that may not know us as Utimaco, say what we are doing. We've been in security for the better part of 40 years, around for 60 years as a company. And I like this picture here that we created to show where our solutions are being used today. So we choose Singapore as a city because it fits on one slide. Otherwise, it's getting a little bit difficult. But it shows basically how your infrastructure gets digitalized. You have 5G deployments, you have banks, you have fintechs, cloud service providers that you have self-driving cars. You have all sorts of scenarios that are considered critical, and part of that needs a secure root of trust. And that is actually what Utimaco is providing. We are actually manufacturing hardware security modules. But I will actually now go into the topic that we want to talk about. This is not about the company Utimaco, but about what we observe in the market. First, as a brief status on where we are with PQC, what our customers are giving us as feedback, and then going a little bit deeper into stateful hash-based signature algorithms where we have specific requests, and we are trying to find here a good solution on how we can use them. And perhaps I start with one thing. Yesterday, Bruno from Cryptographic had a panel, and he actually said one thing that he did in a very good way, in my opinion. He said that we have all the new standards now, but the stateful hash-based algorithms are a little bit, taking a back seat. We are not talking so much about them anymore, even though they're considered very secure, well understood, good size of key versus signature, and so on. And if something would happen to these new standards that we have, there would be, there should be a plan B going back to stateful hash-based algorithms. And I like that when he said that. This is actually also how we look at it, and some of our customers look at it. Not all of them. We spoke to many over this week, but also, of course, before. And we have different opinions, right? There's the lithium, there's Swings Plus, there's other algorithms. Everyone has a little bit of a different preference. But today we actually want to address specifically how we could use stateful hash-based algorithms. And perhaps that becomes a good plan B. So first of all, some things changed, and you have heard quite a bit of that over the week, I guess, so I'm not going into all of the details. But since that's an applied PQC session, I also wanted to give you feedback what we hear from our customers. We had some early adopters that were using the HSMs to already with round 3 algorithms in the past. But we also had customers that clearly stated, there's no standard out yet, so that's not anything we want to look at before the standard is out. Now we have these standards. The standards are there, and customers that talk to us change. So they are actually pushing us now to get the final implementation out, which is probably a couple of weeks' work just to make sure that we have everything in order from round 3 going to round 4, or the final standard. But that is something that actually changed, and we get a lot of feedback and interest now from customers that before were just looking at PQC and saying, yeah, perhaps that's not really what we're starting right now. So the standards help really pushing the topic. Secondly, CNSA helps. So getting ready and preparing your business when you are working in the government, that is actually something that also changed significantly how our customers are approaching us. They now refer to timelines. There's something on paper. There's something they can actually discuss with the compliance departments. So there's really here something that helps pushing PQC forward. We had the White House Roundtable in August. That also showed executive support. And that as well helps quite a bit. in pushing PQC. And our customers see that. So that is actually something we also get as feedback. There is executive support that helps getting money, R&D resources, people to look into PQC algorithms. And finally, and we are a big supporter as a company of that, is the interoperability topic. We cannot solve this ourselves as Utimaco, as being a vendor of hardware security modules. We need the industry for that. And that is actually something where the interoperability testing plays a big role. We have done it with the round 3 algorithms, of course, but we need to continue that. And that is actually one of the areas that also may extend to discussions on how we define agility, how we could actually, as an industry, help changing algorithms in the future for the customers without impacting too much of their software. So that is actually what we see in the market. Hopefully that gets a little bit of an additional perspective on some of the developments. You have heard, of course, some of that probably throughout this week quite intensively. So what is important in this field and where are we currently engaging ourselves? We do think that it starts in the beginning with the crypto discovery topics. We have a partner, ISG, we work with. We have customers that are interested in understanding really what they're using today in crypto. It's not every customer. There are customers that are very prepared. We had a couple of large banks that were saying, we have done this exercise 2 years ago. We have a good overview of what we're using, but then we have also the next customer says we have no clue what we're doing. So that still will become a topic. Of course, this is not necessarily our core, because that's also part of what consultancy companies, of course, are doing. But it's an area that we believe is needed in this transition phase. Industry organization and standardization. So I'm very happy that Volker Krummel from Utimaco is in the audience as well. He's our chapter lead for PQC. So it's good if you know him, then you could actually also discuss a lot of these activities. He's active in different groups here, trying to help with the standardization and making sure that we drive the topic of PQC forward. For us, PQC primarily is centering around the HSM as a root of trust in providing these algorithms. And of course, to some extent, we are here interested in how can we support the industry in a way to agility and being able to change and use different algorithms in a good way. But now I'm coming to the topic that we actually want to deep dive. So it's PQC in distributed environments. As I said before, we have customers that are small and they don't care so much about distributed environments, and they have their local installation and they have everything under control. But we have also, of course, a lot of larger enterprises, and they have distributed manufacturing sites, they have different distributed use cases, and for that we need a solution. So looking at stateful hash-based algorithms, I mentioned briefly some of the good criteria here, the pros on the left. It has actually a good ratio of public key size and signature. So that's a very important part of stateful hash-based algorithms. The other thing is it's well understood from a security perspective. Hashes are very well understood, so it's fairly simple and mature from a design perspective, how you actually look at that. I also heard yesterday that lattices are ugly. That's another speaker said and mentioned that. I cannot comment on that. I'm not a mathematician, but I mean, in the end, stateful is quite well understood and I guess fairly simple from a concept perspective. It is standardized for a while. We should not forget that. So it's around since 2020, and it could also be used as a one-to-one substitution if you don't want to go hybrid. So that's on the positive side. There are some challenges to overcome. You have a state to manage, so that's one of it, and we will address it in this talk. How we think this could be actually managed in a fairly organized, controlled way. We have a limited number of keys, and that is for some use cases potentially a challenge, but for others it's not. So if you're not signing every day, then the limitation is really something that you can overcome by the number of keys that you're generating. You may have actually challenges in distributed setups, as I said before, but what I wanted to point out, and that's also a real-life challenge that we see from some of our customers, they are actually integrating their supply chains. And if you integrate your supply chains and you provide them with key material, then you are at a point where you need to also control the keys, because you don't want to accidentally have one in your supply chain messing up and being in a situation that you had everything under control, but your supply chain failed somewhere. So that's one of these scenarios that we see as one to be addressed. So since we're talking about signing, this is just a general process, right? I mean, this is not necessarily PQ related, but what happens today in the industry, you have some firmware that you want to bring out to an IoT device, to a car, to something else. You have some sort of fingerprint hash value that you want to sign. You're using your key, you sign that, and then after that you have a package that goes to the endpoint, and that endpoint actually takes that, verifies the signature, and then accepts a firmware update, for instance. So this is the process that we see as one of the most important one, where we get a lot of discussions or feedback from the customers today, that is a process they want first to solve using PQC. And that is just a sketch on how this could be done. And of course, in this process, you could use HSMs. You don't have to, but HSMs is a good way to control this if you are in a critical infrastructure like cars, for instance. So why is distributed, or why are distributed environments a challenge? You see here two use cases sketched that we have today with our customers. So we have one where you have manufacturing sites, and that's from the chip industry, and another one that actually deals with satellites and protecting satellite communication. And you can now argue some of that may be centralized, and you could actually have one location that does all the software signing, the firmware signing, and you're good, right? You control it very well in that location. But the reality is it's not that simple. So you, of course, have different production sites, you have different use cases, and so on. And so in all of these examples here, you really see that you're going from one central site and central control to a distributed environment. And that's actually where we actually see some of the challenges we want to solve with our proposal. So, stateful hash-based signatures in distributed environments. Let's look a little bit at a scenario, how this could work. I only added this really in here to, as a part of the presentation. It's mostly known by you how this generally works, right? So the first topic is that when you use these stateful hash-based algorithms, you don't want to have a key for every signature. So you actually organize this in a tree structure, and this tree structure rolls up to one public key, so you can actually make the verification a little bit easier. And also when you talk about HSM technology, for instance, that's something that you could also cover by HSM fairly efficiently. This is how you would organize it in the tree structure, rather than having a key pair per signature. But you probably know that, right? I mean, you work in this part, so I just wanted to include that, because that also is a little bit of the logic that we have in the back of our head when we designed this protocol. So you see, when we go into this case study now, you have these different manufacturing sites. You have HSMs deployed. You may have a headquarter. You may have some manufacturing site, a development site. You may have a supplier that you want to integrate into this whole scheme. This is actually a modern look at an organization, at an enterprise that is in the manufacturing space. And you see that you have HSMs deployed. We used to do that for years for these sort of scenarios. And we never had the challenge that we had to manage those in distributed environments, really. I mean, you had the HSM being local and injecting keys or protecting keys for root CA or something like that. But now actually that we talk stateful hash-based algorithms, that actually is becoming a challenge, because you have a lot of HSMs, and you probably don't want to have individual keys in all of them, which causes also a risk that you potentially, if an HSM goes down, if it doesn't work, if you want to deploy a new one, then you'll run into all sorts of challenges. One thing that I wanted to say here as one of the challenges that we also want to at least partially address, it may not be fully addressed by what we propose, but if you have an HSM and you have OTSs in this HSM, and you want to do a backup, I mean, you want to make sure that if something happens, you want to restore your HSM and you want to get access to your key material just for business continuity. So what do? That's not a straightforward thing, because if you use certain keys and there is even a remote chance that you're reusing a key, you actually jeopardize the security of the whole setup that you have. And so this is it, as you see here, you do a backup. The HSM used some of these OTSs, and then basically you do the restore, and you have to be really careful to make sure that these OTSs are never used again, right? So this is just crossed out. You could use, of course, certain log files or things like that, but I mean, there's still a residual risk that you potentially run in these sort of scenarios if you restore your HSM. So this is just to keep in mind. We will try to find also an answer to this scenario on how you can actually deal with backups in a distributed scenario. So what are the core aspects that we want to address before we go into more details? So this scheme that we propose works with HSMs, and these HSMs have a trust relationship. So they have to be, a little bit more detailed, a symmetric key, and these HSMs can exchange secure messages among the HSMs. And since they are hardware security modules and built with cryptography in mind, we also expect, of course, that they execute this flawlessly, right? I mean, this trust relationship works, and you can really, encrypt data in HSM1, and you can receive it in HSM2, and you have all sorts of, and I come to that in a little bit more detail, aspects covered like freshness and confidentiality and all the good things. But there needs to be a trust relationship, and it's based on HSMs, just to make this clear in the beginning. Then we have to, of course, preserve the state and make sure that there is no possibility of reusing keys, because that would jeopardize the security of the system. That's one of the most critical pieces here. And then finally, we also don't want a master-slave relationship here, where we have always an online connection. There's always a query to some central system if a key, for instance, is used. But we want to actually design this in a way that there's a local state management, so you could even use that system in a sort of a offline fashion. HSMs are still passive components, so they need to have some instructions how to work. So they just execute what they are programmed to do, but they're not now an active element of this whole thing. So you still have your systems, your controls of how you move this around. Just to be clear, some application is basically driving this logic, not the security, right? So the security is completely in this trust relationship among the HSMs. So it's not going to the next slide, but it's definitely not the last one. So let me see that we, now I think it's coming up. There we go. So let's look a little bit into the design requirements that we believe are important requirements, and I mean, feel free to add more if you think we missed any. Volker is talking also to NIST about that, and actually, I think there was the last meeting was in April, if I'm not mistaken, some time around April-ish. Perhaps it was May, I don't know. but earlier this year, where there was a specific session on how we could do this in distributed environments, and as part of that, we have also communicated these design properties as design requirements for this algorithm. So first of course, the security is important, and that's paramount, and that's managed inside of the HSM. It's not outside of the HSM. The HSM will maintain the security. We would split up the keys and the permission. I would call it permission to use the keys. So that actually also ensures that you don't always have to transfer the keys, but more like the permissions to use a certain part of OTSs. You need to have an authentic communication, of course, and that needs to be protected in confidentiality. You have some sort of end-to-end security that is established within this trust boundary, and you will see it in a little animation also on the next slide how this could look like. And then you of course also have to prevent some replays. So if an HSM has already used a certain chunk and then you replay the message, you need to make sure that that is not trying to use that again. Right? So that's also a design requirement from a security perspective. Now, security is important, but of course the customer wants to operate that and wants to actually make sure that that actually fulfills some additional requirements, because particularly manufacturing doesn't always have an online connection. And this scheme we are proposing, it doesn't rely on an online connection. You could also transfer what you have in terms of OTS in a different fashion. You could use a USB stick for that matter, right? You could choose whatever you want to do to get it from point A, from HSM 1 to HSM 2. There's also no master slave, as I said, so there is no need for direct communication. There could be, you could generate all the keys in one HSM and say that's your headquarters, and that's then the one that you distributed from, but any of these HSMs could also then transfer some of these OTSs back. So there's flexibility in the system so that you're not losing big parts of your keys if, for instance, your HSM would fail. We hope it would never do that, but you never know. It's hardware, right? So there is no static setup. So if you want to extend your system, so you have another production site and you want to set up another HSM, that's absolutely possible. You just need to add it to the trust relationship, and then after that you can actually distribute also keys to that HSM. And then there's not really any dependency on algorithms, keys, or the generation method. You can freely choose how you want to do it. This is really only specifying how this permission gets around. So these are the design requirements for this scheme. We haven't really in this discussion, I believe, discovered any requirements that we missed, but like I said, Volker and I are around if there's any thoughts on that later. If there's anything that you would like to see there, we are very happy to discuss that and extend it if needed. So how does it work? So in the first step, and here you see it's a simple example, right? It's not the one that I showed before with development sites and all sorts of manufacturing sites and the headquarters and so on. This is simplified, right? You have two manufacturing sites, you have one headquarters, and that is interchangeable. It's just to show you a little bit how that could be working from a setup perspective. You have HSMs here, and the first thing you do is you actually establish this trust relationship. So you have symmetric keys. These HSMs can talk to each other. These HSMs can exchange encrypted messages. That's the first. So you see this boundary here around these HSMs. And as I said before, one of the requirements is you can extend that. You can remove an HSM from that relationship, and it will not impact this whole protocol. So you're generating the OTSs. And for simplicity reasons, we put this into headquarters, but it doesn't have to be there. So that could even be like a distributed generation. So that is just for simplicity reasons here. So for the animation part, we generate all these OTSs in the headquarters side. And then you have the possibility to move them around. And you don't necessarily, because they are encrypted, you don't necessarily have to move them right into the HSM, but you could also use an external database to store the OTSs. That has an advantage because if you, for instance, would for whatever reason decommission an HSM, then you would not lose OTS 5 to 7 like in this case, but you would potentially, the next step is here, you transfer the OTS 7 into the HSM and you give the permission to the HSM to use that chunk, then that is actually the only thing that you would potentially be losing, and not OTS 5 or OTS 6. So theoretically, you can use that going forward. So there's no possibility, of course, now if the HSM 2 fails here in this scenario to recover OTS 7. So just for security reasons, you would probably discard that part and not restore it, right? This is coming back to this backup and restore mechanism. So we don't have a full backup solution in this case, but you would only lose that part. You would not lose the other parts of this system. You can still transfer them around and use them in the other HSMs. So that's the benefit. So you somehow get into a intermediate sort of scenario here. You could transfer it then to the other manufacturing side, other parts of the keys, and of course you can also transfer them back if you want, right? If you are in the operational state, you're risking to exhausting your keys in one side, then you just transfer additional keys to that side, and you can do it from headquarters, from your long list of OTSs, but you can also do that from any other side. So there's nothing preventing you from moving it around between side A and side B, as long as this trust relationship is maintained. If a site is shut down, I already mentioned that, then you can of course also securely transfer it to another site, so you don't have any replay attacks in these scenarios. And of course, if you had a faulty application for whatever reason, maybe a remote scenario, but an application that might exhaust your keys, then it would only do that on the chunk that is inside of the HSM, but it would not have the possibility to exhaust just your full tree. You can go as far as having several keys generated in different HSMs and then going up to one common public key. There are some scenarios that you can put on top of this protocol just to make it operational. And if an HSM is destroyed, the loss is limited, as I said. So you have not a full backup, but your loss in a specific scenario is somewhat a controlled loss and not a full loss of your key tree. And coming to the final point here on this scenario, you can add and remove HSMs from this trust relationship. It has no impact to the security of the system. You can still move everything around, or remove one of these UTS-3 back and then get it into a new HSM. So that's the idea behind this this algorithm or protocol, or however you want to call this. And then finally, of course, there is some monitoring, because eventually you want to know where your OTSs are and whether an HSM runs out of keys or not. And so there are some monitoring possibilities for you, which have no security implications, right? So this is just basically to understand where everything is, and then you can actually give instructions to move further chunks of the tree around to another HSM, and that's the only thing really that you do here. Everything else is then handled within the HSM. So, summing this up, I believe we're coming to an end. May have time for one or two questions. So, our customers are clearly asking us, some of them, not all of them, but some of them asking us, stateful hash-based algorithms, that's a good thing. We want to use them. We are limited somehow because we are in distributed environments. How can we solve that? That's our proposal. We believe that could be something to adopt, and we are very open to discuss that. So there's probably some feedback from this audience, or concerns, or applause. I don't know. We'll see. But I hope you had a bit of an overview on this protocol and how that works. Thank you.
Thank you, Nils. Thank you, Nils. If anyone has any question, please come to the microphone.
Hi. So I'm not sure I grasp all the details exactly of the scheme. It's sort of an overview, right? But one thing I think maybe might be missing from the requirements is something about replay of channel messages. Even if the channel is encrypted and authenticated, if a message could be replayed, that could possibly create some kind of confusion.
Yes.
Is that something you've considered?
Yes. It is in our design requirements. And I mean, I don't know if you want to add to that further, but I mean, the design requirement, you're absolutely right, freshness is a topic, but you could check that in the messages when they are exchanged in the secure boundary of the HSMs.
So this being a standardization conference, did they change the FIPS requirements on this so that you could move keys around? Because it had been the case, right, that I think you couldn't move keys around.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we discussed with NIST whether this is something to stay or something to change, and if change, then under what conditions, so that to put it like I guess neutrally, because I cannot speak for NIST, right? But I think we all feel that it's holding us back, that we cannot export keys. But if you want to put it to the extreme, this scenario, you don't need to actually export keys in this scenario. You could generate the keys in the HSMs and then just transfer the state information around and allow the HSM to use, chunk 100 to 200 or something like that, and by that avoid to transfer keys. Now, is that very practical? You're going back to some of the drawbacks, because then you may have, even if you have, let's say, an HSM with a certain, not the full tree, but only parts of it, then you still have the problem that if you lose that HSM, you lose also the whole key material that's inside. But if you drive this to an extreme, you could also fulfill the current requirements of NIST. But we're also discussing whether there are ways in this scenario of this trust relationship among the HSMs, whether this could be something NIST accepts as a potential standard.
Thank you.
If it's a quick question, we have.
Oh yeah, it's no, so it also, I meant to ask, but I didn't remember whether you've done formal modeling or proving that the overall scheme has got the properties you want it to have.
I would.
Yes, let's do that.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil. All right. Our next speaker is Marc Wehling. He'll speak to us about Towards a Quantum Secure Future, Exploring QKD as a Complement to PQC. Thank you.
Okay, so I hope. Okay, now that everything is set up, thank you for the introduction. And in this conference, I'm going to do the dirty talk, as I'm going to talk about QKD. So, since I have a bit of a physicist background, you got to bear with me. It's a bit about physics, a bit about so a lot of QKD, a bit about attacks on QKD, a bit about standardization, and a bit of everything, but we'll get through it. So at first, let me briefly introduce to you what is QKD on a fairly high level. So QKD has been around longer than you might think, because it's an old concept. It's just shining a light. So the absence or the presence of light can be referred to as encoding bits. So here you see a man operating an Aldous lamp. So this is basically what QKD is in a nutshell, which has been used in the Navy for communication between ships for a longer time. So what you see here, though, are multi-photon pulses, so whether you open or close the Aldous lamp. And you can then encode maybe Morse code or just say the absence or presence of light is a 0 or a 1. So this is then, in fact, a frequency-based QKD, due to the frequency of how long it is open or closed. So QKD then is a method that is based on quantum mechanics, and it allows two parties to exchange secret keys. So here the problem with this Aldous lamp is that you have these multi-photon pulses, so a lot of photons. And an adversary could just intercept your communication, split part of the pulses, part of the photons, and tap in on the communication. So here, as you can see, there is communication between Alice and Bob. You have this larger arrow from Alice to a beam splitter, which is shown there in the middle. And then Eve gets a portion of the transmitted photons, and the rest gets transmitted to Bob. And both Alice and Bob will never know that there is tapping onto the communication. So how can we reduce this? Well, that is pretty simple. You cannot split something off if there is only one of it. So we reduce the amount of photons per pulse to being a single photon that you cannot divide. And luckily, physics has the no-cloning theorem, which states that it's impossible to create an independent and identical copy of an arbitrary unknown quantum state. So basically you just cannot copy the photon. And this is what we use here, so that Eve cannot make a copy, then you have two, and then she splits a part of it off. And then the whole scheme works again. So using this no cloning theorem, how would we apply QKD? So there are different kind of topologies. So the one is that Alice sends single photons to Bob that contain the information, like here shown in a vertical orientation or in a diagonal orientation, where the information might be encoded into the polarization degree of freedom of the photons. And there are, I mean, this is like the first QKD protocol that has been proposed in 1984 by Bernard and Brazard. It is called the BB84 protocol for this instance. And there has been some modifications to it, like the SARC-04 protocol, which is, as you might have guessed, from the year 2004, where it has been proposed. And you also say, or call them, prepare and measure protocols, because one side prepares the photon states, or the quantum states, and sends them to Bob, and then on the other side, these states get measured, and then due to your protocol, you then extract the key, and you can also, during the protocol exchange, get to know or have knowledge if there is any tapping on the wire due to a compromise of the data or the photons you receive. So another topology uses the last physics I will introduce today. So this is the last topic with just physics. It's talking about entanglement. Entanglement has been around for, I mean, it should be like around now a couple, like 100 years, or 90 years it is. And it was found by Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen in a famous paper. And Einstein initially called it a spooky action at a distance. Because what is it? So it states that if you create a group of particles that interact or then share spatial proximity, you cannot describe them independently. So if you have the description of the one, you need the other two. And if you measure one, then you change the properties of the other particle. So you can use this fact to make another topology of QKD. And here's just written an example of how you would create such an entangled pair of photons, like with a spontaneous parametric down conversion, which is usually applied in for QKD. Vendors usually apply this method, where you have one incoming photon that enters a nonlinear medium, and then two photons come out, and those are entangled due to the conservation of energy. So how can we apply this to QKD? Well, you create entangled photons. Like here in this case, Alice creates a pair of entangled photons. And the photons here entangled are those with the same color. And then she sends one to Bob and keeps one for herself. And then they measure the state. And from the measurement results, both obtain the same value, let's say, either 1 or 0. And then they can derive a key from that. And protocols that use this is the Eckert 91 protocol or the BBM 92. And those are the two major topologies of QKD. But this entanglement-based QKD leaves another option to getting a third party involved. So you could also use a trusted third party, or even a non-trusted third party. You don't have to trust it, which here in the case is Charlie. Charlie creates a pair of entangled photons. He doesn't need to know the state, or I mean, he cannot know the state, because if he would know the state, then the photons would not be entangled anymore, since he would have to measure them. And then he sends these photons, one of each, to Alice and one to Bob, and they can measure the quantum state, the states, and derive a key from that. Yes. So, what looks an exemplary QKD setup like, or what is it like? So this is a very high-level design. So we have on the left side, we have Alice, which uses a laser that creates photon in a defined state. Here it is with a defined polarization state, let's say. And here we have vertically polarized photons. Then they traverse a polarizer, which then encodes the information onto the photons. And you can see this as after the polarizers, the polarization state changed. Then once they go to Bob, there's like a passive basis choice. So you divide by the basis, and then you measure if it's either a 0 or 1. If you measure in the wrong basis, then you get just a random result. but this is covered with then the key extraction once all photons have been transmitted. But this is something I won't go into because I think it's a bit too much for a short talk like this. So, but here you see immediately there are a lot of technical parts like the polarizer, the laser, the passive basis choice. So a lot of components that can be the target for an attack. So even though you have the physical security by sending just single photons, you still have the implementation insecurity. And last year we published a study funded by the BSI in Germany with some partners and with top-level experts from the whole of Europe, where we took a look at the current state of QKD and attacks on QKD and the implementation of QKD, combined then in a condensed document also talking about countermeasures and the availability of these attacks. As we from our side, since I'm from the TÜV, Informationstechnik GmbH, which is an evaluation laboratory, we put an attack rating to those attacks. So how likely or how difficult is it to conduct those attacks? So, and from this study, I just want to present you two attacks. And those are really fun. That was a fun project since it's just the beginning of implementation. So it's like fault attacks or glitches in the early 2000s on hardware where you can just do a lot of things since it's not a good exploit field, and there are a lot of opportunities and a lot of paths towards breaking the security of a system. So now we're talking a bit about attacks on QKD. And the first one I want to present is the laser damage attack. So since electromagnetic pulses are used as an information carrier, we can use this optical line that has somehow be there between Alice and Bob, either be it due to an optical fiber or just free space. We can use this, or Eve can use this, to inject pulses into the setup of Alice. And if you use very strong pulses, you may even damage permanently or temporarily the setup of Alice, rendering it in a state where this damaged part might not operate as intended. As you see here, in the unattacked state, you have single photon pulses, and then maybe the device, the attenuator, that ensures that you only have single photon pulses is not working properly, and you have multi-photon pulses. This then makes it again possible for Eve to mount a photon number splitting attack, so splitting part of the photons per pulse and tapping in onto the communication. And this obviously is a huge problem, but there are also countermeasures in how to counter this. So one can employ optical isolation, such as attenuators, circulators, or wavelength filters. Optical fuses that shut down the optical line when a threshold of incoming light is reached. You could use watchdog detectors to monitor the optical input intensity. However, all those countermeasures are again, or could again, be targeted to the same laser damage attack. Because if you use now another optical isolation, I mean, I can just shoot very strong pulses again in this optical isolation, rendering it useless, and then we're back at square one. So one of the most important things is that one has to monitor the correct functionality of the implemented countermeasures, otherwise they could be rendered useless. So talking to a second attack is the Trojan and Horse attack, which is specifically designed to target one critical piece of technology in a QKD setup, the polarizer. So the polarizer, as explained earlier, encodes the information onto the stream of photon pulses fed in from a laser. And this could be a problem because, again, you can use the optical line, and Eve can inject pulses into the transmitter. Here you see the pulses; they have all the same polarization, and then when they get back, they can be back reflected from the polarizer, and then containing information about the state that the polarizer is imprinted into the photon pulses sent to Bob. So as you can see here, the polarization state of the photons changed and is now proportional to the information encoded that Alice wants to send to Bob. And this, again, is a huge problem, and it only occurs here in active polarization schemes. So how can we fix this? Well, again, we can use the same countermeasures that apply for the laser damage attack, since it is also injecting light into the transmitter. Additionally, though, we can use color filters, so that an attacker just not uses a random different wavelength, where then the back reflection or the reflected light is much more intense. Also, anti-reflection coatings are there that can reduce the level of back reflections. And you can ensure from a technical point that the modulators are only active when really used, when imprinting the piece of information onto the pulse. And in between pulses, they are not active and not containing the information Eve seeks. So those were 2 attacks. So now that is the more fun, or not the more fun, but the more interesting part, is the views on QKD as a security-relevant technologies from cyber agency. And here, in the USA, there is a famous statement from the NSA that it does not support the usage of QKD or quantum cryptography to protect communications and national security systems. So this is a huge bummer for us, as we want to go further into detail there and want to explore it more. And there's a huge market that is just more or less blocked, let's say. But we're trying to work around this. We were trying to make it more acceptable to everyone. So in Europe, the French, the German, the Dutch, and the Swedish cybersecurity agencies published a position paper in January 2024, so early this year, stating that QKD can only be used in practice in some niche use cases, and that QKD is not yet sufficiently mature from a security perspective, which is still, let's say, a bit devastating, but it says right now, so it's good. So we just need to do some more research, and then we can get to this point, hopefully. And then when we look at Asia, I couldn't find any statement from China or Korea or Japan. But when we look at the current research activities and the amount of test beds, QKD test beds that are deployed there, that are being constructed, one can really say that QKD is considered a valid option for the future. And coming back to the NSA statement, there was a famous rebuttal from Renato Renner and Ramona Wolf, where they tackle the limitations and the backsettings that the NSA said are major hindrances to QKD to be employed on a wide scale. And I will address those a bit shortly. It's a very nice paper. I have linked some citations here, so I think all the talks are publicly available, so you can just go there, make your own opinion, say if I spoke too soon, if you're on my page or not. And yeah, let's go into some of those limitations. So one big limitation that is always being talked about is the lack of source authentication for QKD. So this is true to a certain degree, but it also holds true for classical communication. You need to have an initial shared secret between 2 parties, or otherwise you cannot differentiate between the person you want to talk to and an adversary, and Eve. So you need to break the symmetry between, here in this picture, between B and E by using a pre-shared secret. And this is true for PQC, for classical cryptography, and for QKD. However, PQC has the major advantage since protocols are much faster, can be widely deployed, and you don't need a specific gear to use it. And yeah, you could also use a trusted third party with QKD as you would with PQC. So it's a bit of a limitation, but not really, let's say. So another limitation is that the confidentiality services provided by QKD can be tackled using PQC, which has a better understood risk profile. So this is, you put too many eggs into the basket there. So we have to differentiate between protocol security and implementation security. While PQC relies on the hardness of the underlying mathematical problem, that remains unproven. So there is no long-term protocol security, like we saw with Psych, or with the paper a couple of months published that rendered the PQC community for a day or two in a bit of disbelief until the error in the calculation has been found, proving that it is still mathematically secure. But with the emergence of quantum computers and the unfathomable creativity of programmers, there might be future quantum algorithm that could target PQC algorithms. And this is not a problem with QKD. The QKD protocols come with a mathematical proof that even can contain parts of the implementation setup that show you at which threshold to abort the program, the key exchange, because there's an adversary or not. So from a protocol security standpoint, QKD protocols remain secure since they rely on physical properties. But talking about the implementation security, QKD is just at the beginning. There is just too much that can go wrong. This is really badly understood because there has been very little research into the attacks. I mean, the study we published had like 60 plus attacks, but it was not more than 100, and this is very little compared to classical cryptography, where you go from each different path. So there needs to be a lot more research be done, but you need to have the incentive to do this research so that there is a possibility to use QKD in the future. And PQC can use decades of experience from classic side channel analysis and fault injection attacks, as it uses the same hardware as classical cryptography. And then QKD is based, another limitation, on physical properties and thus requires dedicated fiber connections and cannot be easily integrated into existing network equipment. Yes, this is true right now for sure. And well, one thing is, as manufacturers grow more wary of how to produce QKD devices and research continues, also the cost per QKD device will decrease in the future. But it's in the future, and they most likely won't decrease to a level where PQC hardware will ever be. And advancements in optical communication technology will also be made, since also for fiber-based technology right now, technology companies have the incentive to reduce the amount of photons, or the increase the fidelity for the transmittance, so that they can use more, that they can have a higher throughput of information between two parties. And this might eventually reach the requirements for a straightforward and cheap QKD integration, since it's also optical based. We can use the same optical fibers once the fidelity is high enough, without having to rely on optical nodes or quantum repeaters at every couple of kilometers. And then QKD is hardware based and thus has no flexibility to upgrade or security patches. Well, since QKD provides a mathematical proof of security, the protocol does not need any updates because it cannot be compromised. And then for the hardware part, ultimately, since cryptography schemes run on hardware, if one shows a vulnerability or to side channel or fault attacks, patches will be required independently of the cryptographic scheme you're using. And some of these flaws can be covered by changing the protocol maybe, and including the flaw, the vulnerability, into the security proof, which is then a change of the protocol, just as you would change maybe the software on top of the hardware for PQC algorithms or classical cryptography. So then well, this is one of the major flaws of QKD right now, is that QKD networks rely on the use of trusted nodes relays, which increase the cost for secure facilities and the security risk from insider threats. Well, this is also true right now, and here comes the a definition for later what is the timeline for QKD, because what QKD also really relies on is on the emergence and the invention of quantum repeaters. So repeaters that you don't have to that have to trust, but that can use quantum teleportation to get the entanglement from one particle to another, which then can be relayed again to a further away node. And this is then protected by the laws of physics, which does not have any cost for secure facilities, since you can there at these quantum repeaters not measure your information, otherwise you would immediately know that there is an adversary, and it cancels out the risk from insider threats, since you don't have to trust you have to trust the quantum repeaters from working correctly, but there is no one operating needed or that can tap into it or into what they are doing. So this also sets the timeline for QKD. Since if you now want to ask me how long will it take, and I would have to give a number, I cannot. And this is also a flaw, let's say. But the timeline is that we have to monitor how development with quantum repeaters is going on in the future. So the more readily available quantum repeaters become, the more easily it is to build up a QKD network. And there has been progress made. And in China, in the Shanghai-Beijing QKD network, they bridged a distance of 2,000 kilometers using 32 trusted nodes. And yeah, this is the current world record. They even attached free space QKD using a satellite to relay information to another station, which is then again 2,500 kilometers away. So in all, this is like 4,600 kilometers of distance they can cover using a QKD network. So carefully monitor the emergence of quantum repeaters. And now I want to talk a bit about another possibility, which is the hybrid approach of QKD and PQC. So I talked a lot about what QKD can offer, what PQC cannot offer, but there's just a lot that PQC offers that QKD can never offer. So post-quantum cryptography, it does not require special hardware. Software implementations can be cached easily, and it is already standardized for NIST. On the other hand, long-term security might be compromised since it relies on mathematical structures that can be the targets for future attacks. So one can never be sure if the algorithm will be broken in the future, and the future is tomorrow, or in 100 years, or 1,000, or 1,000,000. We don't know. And that is a risk, that is a threat. And this threat gets cancelled out by quantum key distribution, since the security is based on physical principles. And once a key is established, you have no target, no entry point on attacking it. You just can brute force the key. And it has mathematical security proofs, so the whole implementation can be secure. But it requires dedicated hardware for receiver and sender, and there is no standardization yet. And yeah, this brings me to the hybrid approach. Why don't we combine PQC and QKD that uses the flexibility, the availability for end users, and the mathematical protection of PQC together with the quantum mechanical protection from QKD in a secure network? So PQC provides security against threats in the short and midterm, where midterm refers to the emergence of quantum repeaters. And QKD provides long-term security against quantum computer threats and side-channel threats against PQC algorithms or implementations. So I found a really nice picture from the South Korean telecom, where they had a press release on how they think a combined PQC-QKD network could be implemented. So on one hand, you have the data centers and the backup data center in the middle, which are secured using QKD. And then the connection from data centers or base stations to the end user is mostly done using PQC, since then the end user does not require to have additional hardware. And this setup uses then both benefits of PQC and QKD. So what is missing? Well, standardization of QKD, that is missing. So we're not at the beginning, which is a good thing. So the European ETSI has published documents that contain security proofs, a protection profile using the language of common criteria, and also document how to characterize optical components, which is more directed to manufacturers. Additionally, last year, ESO and IEC published a document talking about the requirements and evaluation and testing methods for QKD devices. So we're not at the beginning. We now can test against those norms. And here is the next problem, the real problem with QKD certification. We have three parties. We have the manufacturers, we have the certification body, and the evaluation laboratory. So the manufacturer are waiting for the certification body to tell them what to do. What are the threats? How do we have to build our QKD system? And the manufacturer, the certification body is waiting for a manufacturer to approach them and say, hey, we have this QKD system and we want to certify it. How can we do this? But it's a bit chicken and egg problem. Everybody's waiting for everyone, and we are waiting for the manufacturer to go to the certification body, and certification body to tell us, yeah, you can test here. So how do we do it? Well, we take the first step. In Germany, and there is the QNet initiative, which is funded from the government, from the Ministerium for Education and Research, that hosts several projects that aim to develop a quantum network that ensures data transmission between federal authorities. So, and we as an independent evaluation laboratory, we will build up, starting from next year, a test laboratory where we can test QKD devices, receiver and transmitter. We have in this project, which is the QNet Blue Cert, so a blueprint for certification, a couple of manufacturers that will provide us with QKD devices that use entanglement-based QKD, non-entanglement-based QKD, CVQKD and DVQKD, which is all flavors then of QKD combined, that we can then, or that we will be able to test, to mount attacks against, test countermeasures and everything. So this is us taking the first step, and I hope it will be a good step and a big leap for QKD. So thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask now or later or write in mail. Thanks.
So a quick one.
Yeah.
In the demos downstairs, there was a vendor, a middle one, who was offering a QKD communication. Were you it?
Not yet. No, I'm sorry. I'm not yet. But I will immediately in the coffee break. I will have a go for sure.
I think they're gone.
They're gone already. Oh, that's too bad. Oh.
Yeah, hi. Your SK Telecom slide where you showed PQC and QKD, are you talking about establishing a QKD, say, network at layer 1, and then PQC being on top of that, end-to-end, independently? Or are you talking about a hybrid key where you're either bitwise XORing a post-quantum key and a QKD key, or into a key derivation function? Like, what do you mean by that slide?
Yeah, the press release is not that detailed, okay. But there are also some papers that suggest that you have a combination of first a PQC key that is used, and then XORing a QKD key on top.
And does that maintain information theoretic security by XORing, bitwise XORing those two keys?
Could be the case. I mean, you still would have to test it, how it is done, and it should provide the physical security from QKD, and then the short midterm security from PQC.
Right.
Then there also has been papers that say you have QKD as a backbone, which is not used for the end user. So you have a portion of the network using or relying on PQC and then on QKD. Yeah. So all approaches are now just, let's say, thrown into the field, and then somebody has to really set up a network that employs both of it.
Okay.
And there has been one, I think there's one in Berlin, the Berlin QKD setup, testbed, where they do use QKD in hybrid with QKD. But about the exact usage of both, I'm not sure how it is. So
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you all. We are late for questions, so please, meet the speaker outside and you can ask further questions there. Post-quantum cryptographic hardware engineering from Reza. Okay. Go ahead.
Like the slides. Do you know where are the slides? Here, not folder or?
Yeah.
Folder. Very good. Maybe we close that one.
There you go.
Okay. Okay. Hello everybody, welcome. My name is Reza Azarderakhsh. I'm the founder and CEO of PQSecure Technology. I'm also a professor at Florida Atlantic University. So I'm going to briefly mention a little bit of cryptographic engineering aspects of PQC happening in the past few years, and then also look into some performance and numbers and protections. So with the announcement of PQC algorithms, we are left with mostly complicated algorithms that you could see Kyber and the Lithium for implementations under FIPS 203 and 204. Sphinx is also there, and Falcon is coming soon, and we have code-based algorithms. Hopefully they'll be standardized next year, 2 or 1 of those maybe, and also on-ramp digital signatures in the future. So also we have CNSA algorithms for XMSS LMS already standardized by NIST, and we are going to use them for certain applications. So CHIPS Act of US CHIPS and Science Act basically bringing attention to the implementation of cryptographic algorithms with agility, flexibility and scalability and many other things because of changes of algorithms and also other parameters that we see happening every day. For example, over-the-air updates for medical devices or even, for example, cars. And that's one of the main reasons that we are everybody's talking about agility, but we would like to learn what agility could be for cryptographic implementations and what are the trade-offs that we would like to get there. So in terms of final products or early products, actually everybody is doing prototyping in software, but I'm talking about like soon going to hardware implementations and making products of engines that are implementing these crypto algorithms. So we have fast movers and fast followers, DoD defense agencies, as well as IoT companies that they're developing their own solutions. They need to get worried about for future because life cycle of those devices might be longer. And also on the other side, developing IP for cryptographic engineering. I mean, PQC algorithm is also a real concern with the facts that US is bringing CHIPS Act to the country and also would like to develop in-house everything from the scratch as well as IP production and also development. So PQC is getting more challenging in terms of the fact that people are getting less collaboration or overseas, I think, working together or licensing IPs from certain countries and other places. So software, they say we do software first and then we do hardware and maybe hardware software co-design. So starting from software, if you notice that I think it's a little bit of work already happened in the past by standardization and also in the past 10 years almost happening. We have reference implementation codes and we have NIST recommended ANSI implementations. A lot of device level optimizations for example, assembly implementations or even very low level hand optimized implementations are already available for some certain algorithms, for example, Kyber, the Lithium, and some others. Also on the other side, C has its own vulnerabilities and problems, and we would like to migrate from C to Rust, and government is developing some activities, funding for because of vulnerabilities that C is providing, we go to Rust, and there's a program called recently announced Tractor, transferring all C to Rust, which is also important factor of if you're implementing everything from the scratch now in C, at one point of time you need to convert everything to Rust maybe. So another aspect is side channel protection and formal verification, which is some work has been done, but less. To be, I think, honest, in my opinion. The next thing is actually working or developing hardware after software you're done. Department of, I think, NIST recently in the conference, Quantum World Congress announcing that, hey, we will do software first. A lot of activity is going to happen for software, and then software will go down, and we will have hardware. So, which I think also that's actually true, but it needs actually to get ready for hardware, because it's not going to be only pure hardware. Because hardware, of course, we have FPGAs, reconfigurable FPGAs. You can do all kind of reconfigurability, but not as much as flexibility that software is providing you, and also, which is on the other side, also ASIC implementations are becoming more challenging. Side channel protection, which is not kind of something that we can achieve in software, it is very feasible in hardware if you do it. And also verification and assurance is pretty much also could be done completely. So on the other side, we would like to see what makes it more interesting, or requirements of the applications are asking for hardware software co-design. And then we are talking about hardware software with ARM processors, with hardware in an FPGA, or even like RISC-V controllers, how much you'd like to push into hardware and how much you'd like to keep as a controller in your software to make sure that things are running first securely and then also properly and with efficiency. So another thing is, a good thing is that, again, FPGAs are offering that, I think, capabilities for us, with the fact that you can get, for example, any RISC-V. Luckily that everything is mostly actually open source, or even you can get access to ARM flexible access IPs you can put into your FPGA. You can have an ARM processor that has a software controller to your any FPGA, any hardware implementation. So things that are people still looking into that is side channel protection of hardware and software implemented PQC algorithms. These are, and also testing and verification. And another thing is also assurance. High assured implementations of PQC still is not done in hardware, because we don't have a lot of open source hardware implementations. So again, CHIPS Act has also some hubs that are focusing in the US mostly, I think, for 5G, IoT security, edge security, and also like cryptographic implementations of these. So looking into migration of PQC and steps that we need to take to get to all the way down there to be able to have a product of, I mean, like a hardware or software implementations of PQC. Some steps are already have, I think, taken risk assessments of things. So you don't need to be worried about the risk of whatever going from the ECC to Kyber, or code-based cryptography, or the lithium, or Sphinx. But exploring algorithms and parameters, as previous yesterday's talks and others are also, we have a lot of parameters. These parameters are making software and also hardware implementations with maybe thousands of actually configurations, which is very hard actually to maintain and understand, or even to update, upgrade, or even add on the bottom side channel or fault injection attacks, countermeasures to them, and get ready for example, FIPS or standardization or certification of common criteria and other things. These are, I think, when we have more algorithms with more parameters and more security levels and performance levels, already we are talking about factorial of, I mean, like 3 times 3 times 3 or 4, and then we are left with a lot of reconfiguration. So it's an uncharted territory, a little bit post-quantum cryptography, because algorithms that we see here, these are very different than previously RSA and ECC. Still, I think, to be honest with you, I think I have not seen complete open source, even ECC, completely side channel protected, fault injection protected implementations available open source for evaluation by public. So, of course, there is Calyptra, for example, Microsoft and Intel and others provided something. But if you look at that, it's openly developed but privately, maintained. That makes it very hard to or reliable to actually taking it and working on it or taking to the product level. So I would like to skip this one. Probably you have heard already a lot about ECC and RSA, things that are going to stay a little bit with us for a while, and then the discussion of hybrid and composite is becoming, I think, more interesting. I think some agencies were talking about this. Is actually showing that how we can perform hybrid in serial or parallel, and also in composite model working together, or having a crypto agility for the implementations and compliance and retirement of algorithms by time for ECC, RSA going to these PQC algorithms. So software and the hardware, basically, I think having them working together is going to give us some sort of agility and protections that we would like. But the point is that the question that is coming to the mind first thing is how much agility is feasible in terms of the fact that how much you'd like to spend on silicon, how much you would like to spend on the security aspects of, for example, side channel attacks, how many traces you're worried about your attackers will be able to apply or take from hardware implementations. One thing which is actually we have been observing in the past few years implementing side channel protected hardware IPs is that side channel protection solutions definitely should go to hardware. They can't stay in software because of many reasons that we are going to actually explore in this talk today. So when you are doing hardware software kind of co-design for implementing PQC algorithms, basically you're left off with various flavors of design models or solutions that you could do with with RISC-V processors or MCU with memory shared or hardware various implementations of the algorithms, and also solutions based on availability of your software controllers, right? So NXP, earlier this year actually, NXP was one of the companies that they were looking very highly in software implementation of PQC. They developed a lot of software libraries for their own DSPs in FPGAs, just software implementations, but with DSPs on for automotive industry. Earlier this year, they mentioned that crypto agility, of course, they wanted to do software implementations, everything flexible, scalable, over-the-air updates, everything was getting there smoothly. But they recently announced that it's an ambitious goal, and they stopped it actually. Pure software implementation. And you know what was the reason? Anybody? Do you want to guess? Once? Okay. So the reason was actually side channel protection. Because side channel protection is in software is not going to happen. Protection countermeasures. It could happen, but it's going to be very, very expensive. In the fact that if you'd like to make your software implementations of all these PQC algorithms, they will be still vulnerable for even non-AI assisted side channel attacks, DPA attacks, simple power analysis attacks, and also AI assisted is helping a lot there. So obviously, of course, a lot of people are doing currently software implementations, but ultimately I think software is not the goal, because that's not gonna fly. Another point is that everybody is holding an IoT or something maybe in the room today, or if you have a laptop or hardware devices or something, smart glasses or watch, whatever. Classical crypto, everything is implemented in hardware. We don't have any of these currently RSA, ECC, AES, SHA-32, whatever you're using over there, they are all implemented. Regardless they're side channel protected or not. If you're using, for example, one of those ARM old algorithms, the crypto cell libraries are integrated over there, obviously not side channel protected, but in the future, I think they need to be side channel protected. So this was actually true for a while, but recently it seems that US agencies are also going to allow hybrid integration and implementations of ECC. Still, NSA says, hey, if you'd like, or Canadian GCHQ, I was presenting this in one of those ETSI conference in Singapore, and Canadian security establishment, they told us, hey, we don't say you don't implement PQC hybrid, we say just talk to us. So same thing, I think NSA, if you'd like to do hybrid is fine. But it has its own challenges in terms of implementations, right? So Google started using Chrome Kyber level 2 plus Curve 25519, but I have not seen any side channel protection or assured implementations of both in hardware actually, which is kind of actually challenging task. So some sort of comparison quickly I'd like to compare here. As you could see here, sorry, it seems my colors are not compatible here, but we are talking about 32 bytes of public key size of ECC, for example, NIST P256 to Curve 25519 to Kyber. For example, level 1 is 760 or 1.5 kilo, right? That's something that we... And also for digital signatures, we are talking about these 64 byte of ECDSA or Curve ED25519 comparing to that turquoise color or even a Sphinx that is very expensive up there. So sometimes people are talking that Sphinx is good, we can use it for LMS, XMSS. Of course, key size is huge over there, right? Sphinx has two separate variants. I think F and S. Standard one is also standard one is very fast, but is slow actually, slow, but key size is very smaller, half size. And but if you would like to make it fast, it's gonna be skyrocketing and a lot. 29 kilobyte is gonna be something like 45 kilobytes, something like that for digital signature size. And Falcon is also there. Hopefully, it's coming up for certain applications. So I have some numbers here, unprotected ECC. So general misunderstanding or I think information is that Kyber post-quantum crypto is faster than ECC or faster than RSA, which is not true. The reason is, if you would like to compare, for example, these are implementations that we have done. These are hand optimized, honest, clear, okay, based on and also we have contributed some of them to PQM4 libraries and also our own GitHub libraries too. Unprotected ECC, if you're comparing to, for example, Kyber key encapsulation and decapsulation together. So Curve 25519 is roughly about 500,000 cycles for 1-point multiplication. If you're considering 2-point multiplication for Alice and Bob, both sides, about 1 million cycles. So same thing for Kyber. If you're doing key encapsulation one side and the decapsulation on the other side, same thing, roughly about 1.1 million. So same. Nobody is faster or something or slower or whatever. But if you're going, I mean, the same thing for digital signatures that you could see here. For example, we're comparing to ED25519, and if you compare, for example, on the here dilithium is a lot slower, which is on the very right side over there. Comparing to higher level security, so because Curve 25519 everybody's using these days, but if you're jumping into Curve 448, which is in the middle, it's a lot slower, as you could see, right? It's a lot slower than. I mean, it's the next security level after Curve 25519. So all the way on the right side, we have dilithium. So key generation, signing. You see signing, how signing is expensive for dilithium. It's actually skyrocketing. Maybe I can use this one. So this is the dilithium signing process and also verification. They both are slower than basically ECC, right? That's not something that we want to say post-quantum is faster than ECC. So if we are going to make these implementations actually side channel protected, so these are DPA protected. So sometimes people are talking about constant time implementation as side channel. That's not true. If you are going to get FIPS 140-3 non-invasive attacks, that says DPA. DPA attacks requires to perform TVLAs and then T-tests and then make sure that statistically, whatever you're doing for your secrets in your hardware, they are separate from your secrets, okay? So DPA or differential power analysis countermeasures, if you add into your classical cryptography, or for example, Curve 25519 ECC, or if you'd like to make, for example, the Kyber, the lithium over there, you see that, for example, forget about, for now, about this Curve 448, these are getting more expensive. And as we're talking about, for example, point randomization, scalar blinding, and other techniques for ECC, and for Kyber and the lithium, to be able to pass those TVLA things, you need to add both shuffling as well as masking techniques, which is going to make your hardware implementations, actually software for now, a lot more expensive in terms of the cycle counts for the operations. So same thing applies for dilithium. If you're comparing dilithium with EDDSA, the reason I'm comparing with EDDSA and not NIST P256, because EDDSA and the Curve 25519 are a lot faster and easy to implement. That's why they're widespread these days, and we see every day, except for government applications. So you could see here that if we are talking about comparing the lithium with keygen sign and the verification of ECC Curve 25519, again, it's a lot slower if we do that. So the problem is first order, second order masking, third order masking, fifth order masking. We had a paper earlier this year actually, fifth order masking of Kyber still leaks. Software implementations, ARM Cortex M4 still leaks, is still insecure. With also single trace, means that you don't need even to collect a lot of traces for DPA attacks. The reason is that software is inherently running things sequentially, but in hardware, basically, we're running things more in parallel. So this figure actually here is comparing the whatever we had is summarizing this. So ECC here with no side channel protection, very similar. If you're adding first order masking or one of those ECC related scalable line point randomization or something, your actually overhead is about 30 something, 20%. Silicon wise, same thing. Not even close to 40% or something like that. If you're going to another third order masking, you see that Kyber starts growing, it's getting more slower, and fifth order, actually this is second order masking and this one is third order masking. Remember, fourth order masking is also, fifth order masking is already leaking. So this is third order masking, it's about like 49 times slower than what we have here for example, for comparing to Curve 25519 if you would like to make it side channel protected. Conclusion from here is that software implementations for level 1, 2 security of HSMs, whatever you'd like to perform, fine, because you don't need maybe side channel protection over there. Sometimes you don't have, your device is not going to be accessible for side channel attacks or traces or power analysis. But if your device is going to be accessible, like IoT devices that are out there, keys, whatever, then 3 and 4 level of security applies, and you need to apply side channel protection in hardware, because software is going to kill performance, and that's still you won't be able to make it. This is the reason actually NXP is stopped here, and then they're coming back to hardware software co-design, which is actually performing essential computations in hardware, including side channel protection, maskings, whatever we do, techniques that or randomization techniques that we apply in hardware, and then you put some control, a little bit of control sides to software, which is making this more efficient. So this is one of the IPs that we have developed for Kyber and the lithium together, level 1 up to level 5 security with side channel protection, various flavors for basically for the performance, tiny, compact, balanced, and high performance. It has its own application. So for various kind of things. And we have here, what you could see here is that the hierarchy of computational things that on the bottom, as you could see, for example, SHA-3, PRNG, entity, butterfly unit, and the polynomial multiplication, everything, these supposed to go to hardware. And SHA-3 even that you use here, it needs to be also protected. So it applies to other algorithms. So I wish I had more time to talk about, for example, XMSS and LMS that people are talking, hey, since you're using key signature one-time signing, you don't need to protect against but there are attacks again for same thing for Sphinx and also XMS LMS if you are not protecting your SHA-3 or even SHA-2 over there, DPA protection. So these graphs are real actually, that we have TVLAs for, this is for dilithium and this one is actually for Kyber. Dilithium, of course, for signing, because verification you don't need to be worried about the protection, and also Kyber for decapsulation and keygen for both. Keygen for both need to also be protected. Sometimes I notice people are implementing RSA or ECC without even protecting RSA key generation, which is an important part. That's actually, if it's not, then that's the whole thing is not secure. So with that combined implementations of PQC, CHEM, Kyber, and the lithium, we were able to 30% make hardware slower because it's using both hardware, sharing some stuff there for SHA-3 and many other things for computations. So I have here some numbers for comparison. We have been able to, in comparison to software. So what I have here, as you could see here, it's a lot faster. You see that like this is like a keygen keygen encapsulation and decapsulation, and the other one is I think for the lithium, all security level 5. These are ARM Cortex M4 hand optimized, very optimized implementations, right? Unprotected. So we are comparing those with protected hardware. So if I'm talking here about unprotected software, I mean protected software, I don't think even logarithmically I won't have places to put these together here, because this is going to be very tiny to compare. So comparing our hardware implementations with protection, DPA protection, third party also, for example, testing TVLAs pre-silicon and also post-silicon. FPGA almost runs about several 10 times, 15 times, 20 times, 30 times faster than the computations here, as you could see here. This is the hardware and this is the protected hardware. Another one here is actually applies for the lithium. We compare all of these here, and as you could see, hardware is making things more efficiently and also securely. Remember, up there what we have for software implementations, these are not secure, and if you're going to deploy in real applications. So I stop here. There are some adaptations of PQC in hardware. I think large semiconductor companies, mid-size, everybody want to do their own things. Like some people, some companies, they would like to, hey, what if I do my own PQC IP libraries? As I explained, as you've been able to figure out, there are a lot of configurations of these IPs and hardware and side channel protection, fault injection attacks, various flavors of parameters, security levels, and also performance levels. These are going to actually give you a big number of maintenance, I think, maintaining these applications and libraries. So I update here. I'll take if there are any questions here. Thank you very much. Sure.
Is the mic on? Yep. You mentioned that implementations of PQC in C have vulnerabilities and one has to move to Rust. Can you elaborate a bit more what kind of vulnerabilities and what it takes to mitigate them in C?
Simple. Memory leakage. I mean, PP stack memory is always making implementations vulnerable because as you access memories, so that's the main thing coming from. And the recent attack that you saw for airlines, everything was a simple update of memory of C. Any other questions? Very good. Thank you very much, everybody.
One more quick. Sure. You mentioned that software is vulnerable to side channel attacks and gave it as a cause to move to hardware.
Yep.
From my understanding, side channels exist in hardware. It's when software executes in hardware, you can sense power, you can sense execution time. Yeah,
sorry if it's misunderstood. So, so software means you're running software in a microcontroller or CPU. And hardware means you actually implementing your crypto in hardware. For example, in ASIC or FPGA. So that's the main thing.
So ASIC is fundamentally immune to side channels?
Nope. If you add the protections, it's still going to be. Yes. Thank you. Sure, no worries. Thank you, everybody. Bye.